As a graduating senior, it seems like creativity is a buzzword many employers are looking for. And as a student who studied both film and theater, I'm constantly thinking about creative ideas and projects. But sometimes I wonder, what does creativity actually mean?
Having an answer that's unique to you.
I can't really look around and see very much that's not creative. It's just the human impulse. It's what we're doing all the time.
Making connections between things that maybe don't seem related on the surface, but sort of, if you dig a little deeper, are very connected.
Freedom. Freedom to live my life the way I want to.
It's a really different way of thinking that really adds to what you know instead of demonstrates that you know.
I talked to several professors about the topic of creativity, and it was a very informative exploration. First, I talked to Colleen Seifert, a psychology professor who specifically studies creativity in order to get a more scientific understanding of this topic.
In your brain, there's a network called the executive control network, and it's kind of every part of your brain that lights up when you're trying to do something. So if you're thinking of an answer or solving a problem, a lot of the areas of the brain are connected in a particular pattern. And when you're not trying to do something, that's called the default. So you're just daydreaming or relaxing, you're not trying to do anything for a moment, then you get a different pattern of activation. And that's been termed the default. Well, it turns out the default is the kind of processing you need to be creative, where you're not trying to solve a particular path, the next step. You're just letting it all influence each other. You're letting the association of ideas happen. And you're not directing the association. You're not thinking, I have to figure out the answer. You're thinking, what about this?
I was fascinated by the idea that a default state can lead to creative breakthroughs. But how am I supposed to get into a default state when I'm making a creative work? So I talked to Laura Kosiski, a novelist, poet, and professor from the University of Michigan, in order to understand how I can access a default state while still making creative work.
I never let myself think to myself that I'm starting a new project. Because if I sit down at the computer and I tell myself, oh, I'm gonna write a poem now, I go completely blank and I get very anxious and I go do the laundry or anything else that I can do. So I mean, part of what I do in writing every day is I have notebooks. I have tons of things that are already half started or begun, or I could pick up on, or I could go back to, so that I never feel like I'm starting from a new project. When you're a writer, I mean, everything you're doing, everything, you just tell yourself to look at the world like a writer. Tell yourself to think about how you would describe that. And even if you don't go straight home and do it and write some prize-winning poem from it, it's gonna be there. It's gonna be in your mind, and it's gonna be in your head. You're gonna be able to retrieve it at some point.
Another person that I talked to about the creative process was Mark Tucker, a professor who leads Festivals, a major public art installation that happens every year in Ann Arbor. He has a lot of students that don't come from artistic majors, and so I wanted to ask about what it means for different students to be creative.
If you were to hear someone say, I'm not a creative person, what would you tell them?
I would say, did you get up this morning? Did you have a vision for your day? How we go about our day? And then how we go about envisioning a future that we don't even know we're going to have, but we have faith that we're going to have it. I mean, that's a vision, right? So it's not just about, oh, can I mix, blue and yellow and make green? It's like, what kind of a life do I want to have? And once you've even thought of that, I think you're creative.
About 10 years ago, I started working with a student in design. And seeing how designers think was shocking. For these designers, even though there is a right answer that's known, they want a different answer. So the way they think is all about, what difference can I create here? If I think of a solution, can I think of a different solution from that? It happens across domains. It's not just designers to say, what is a question we haven't asked yet? Like, that's a really creative step, and every field needs to do that. And great mathematicians are doing that. We're just not thinking of what they're doing as creative.
After talking to Professor Seifert about creativity existing in all fields,
I wanted to explore creativity outside of the arts, so I talked to scientist and professor Louise Simon.
I think creativity is really important in science, especially sort of early science. So we think of science as being sort of this list of facts and things we have to memorize and rules about the way the world works, but all of those things that we now kind of take for granted or assume are true or sort of memorize in high school were things that someone at some point had to prove. I heard someone describe their science as being undisciplined, and I just really like that phrase, that turn of phrase for talking about interdisciplinary science. And the idea is that you're asking questions that kind of don't fit traditionally within one sort of box that we've drawn around the way we kind of study the world. Thinking about which questions are sort of the best ones to ask. The scientific process, right, doesn't tell you how to do those things. That's kind of the creative process.
It's clear to me that creativity plays so many functions in our personal lives and in the world. But how do we practice creativity in our everyday lives? How do we stay creative?
Making sure to kind of step back and look at the world through different lenses than your own. A lot of times, really creative ideas come from kind of what we would call a beginner's mind.
It sounds very uncreative, but usually I enforce some sort of goal on myself. And it's only when I'm actually in the process of writing that I know what I'm going to write about or how I can do it. It's just doing it.
You're going to have to create your own tools, and you're going to have to create your own language. If you're not doing that, you're simply imitating what people have done before you. But taking that risk is, an absolute must. You have to do that at some point.
It really is okay to propose a solution that turns out to be not the best one. You can't know ahead of time how it's going to turn out. But we do know that if you don't produce that unusual solution, we'll just keep doing the same thing over and over. I'm stunned that we're throwing away really interesting ideas because they don't fit what we expect. And instead, we should be paying more attention to ideas we don't expect because we're learning so much more about the world than whether someone can give us the right answer again.